this is a short installation guide for the Yonaka motor mounts here. This is for the 94 to 2001 DC or DB chassis for the Integris, or the 92 to 95 chassis for all Civics, EG class or EJs. Alright, so we'll just start off by pointing out which motor mounts are which. Okay, we got them lined up as they are set up on the vehicle here. This mount right here is a transmission mount. Okay, these are pretty much direct bolt-on for any B-Series trannies, except for automatics, and cable. Although with cable, I believe it's simple modification to get them to work. This is the rear mount here. It's typical three bolt mount. Okay, the factory one on the EG chassis that are single overhead cam. What you have to do is when you remove the rear mount, okay, this mount actually has a spot that needs to be moved over to the right on the cross member, and then you have to use the B-Series transmission bracket, which is the T bracket. Pretty easy to come by. Pretty much any B-Series from any car application works fine. And then here you got the driver's side mount, and the shallow spot here actually has to face up. That, if you install it upside down, it's not going to fit right. It's not going to work. It's actually meant to stay like that. Okay, so that's to start off with. Okay, and basically I started off with the driver's side mount first, taking that out. Okay, but first, before you even want to do anything like that, you want to crawl underneath the car here and set your jack up underneath. I just set it up on the oil pan there. You don't really have to worry about it really crushing anything or causing any problems. You're not jacking the car up in the air or nothing like that. It's just there to support it. Okay, now you don't have to go crazy on this to lift it sky high in the air or nothing. You don't even need to take the car off the ground to do the top mounts, the tranny mount and the driver's side mount at all. The rear mount in the back, you do need to get to that up in the air. It's much easier to do on a lift, but we'll get to that later. Alright, here we go on the driver's side mount. It's 3-bolt mount plus the center bolt. And right now we're going to go over basically what you need to take off in preparation. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing to do. First, you want to, if you have a GSR Type R model, or if you added an aftermarket strut bar, you're definitely going to want to take that off first. Nuts here, set it to the side. You don't really need that right now. Then next, if your car came with cruise control, an EG chassis, a lot of times you probably won't have to do this. Set that out of the way. Okay, and then there you go. You reveal the mount. Okay. Now, if you already jacked up the mount, jacked up the oil pan, you should just jack it up enough to relieve stress from the mount itself, so that way you can get this bolt out down here. Now, I have managed not to have to take the power steering line off at all. It's kind of a pain, but once you get it in there and figure it out, it's pretty simple after a while. Basically, all these bolts here are 14 millimeter. The hardest one to really get to, actually, with leaving this power steering line on is this left one right here. But if you have a nice set of wrenches, I usually use a ratcheting wrench, put that sucker on there, and you can either tap it with a hammer, and it comes right off. If it's a little rusty, spray some penetrating lube on, and then you also have the bolt that's usually down here. I usually leave that one to last, because that one, at least it'll still hold it in there a little bit, so that way if you're trying to wiggle that out, the mount isn't moving all over the place. So again, the main bolt that we have here, this is 17, and it goes all the way through, all the way to the other side. You only need the wrench on the left side of the bolt. The other side has a nut that's welded on right there. You actually don't even need to touch that nut at all. Don't need to put anything on it. It's just basically this side. Bolt unscrews, take it out. Real simple thing to do. Okay, and then the mount, once you have the oil pan jacked up, mount should just pop out real easy. wiggle it around a little bit. And it pops out just like that. Okay, set that to the side. Now, you walk over and grab your new mount, okay? Again, you want to make sure that the indentation is actually facing up, not down. And then go ahead and wiggle that guy in there. Alright, got that in there, okay? Pretty straightforward. See how it sits in there. Lines up pretty good. What you have to do is you have to manipulate the mount a little bit so that way you can get the center bolt in. See how you have to, it's got some slack in there. That's so that way the adjustability for, you know, the other chassis and whatnot can work with these mounts. It's not a bad design at all. Alright, now that you get your mounts in place here, what you're going to want to do is kind of wiggle it around, you know what I mean? Don't put the bolts on or nothing, you know, like that. Just you want to work on the center bolt, the main one. You want to get that in first, you know, you want the slack there, so that way it goes in. And just keep threading it in, and then soon enough you'll see that it's, you know, it'll come out right there. Start to thread up, and then you're good to go on that once you have it hand tight in there. Okay, and then you'll notice it kind of picks the mount up a little bit here. That's not really an issue. What you're going to want to do then is just make sure that everything's lined up and that you can fit the nuts on there. Okay. All right, so I got the bolt threaded through. Basically jacked up the engine from the oil pan. You should have still had your jack still positioned there, and you want to definitely save the, I should say, washers. You want to make sure that they're still available. It helps distribute, you know, the clamping force down when you're tightening the nuts down better, more evenly. And you know, just go ahead, you know, hand tighten them. You don't want to tighten everything up right about now. You just want to make sure that everything is you know, just on properly, everything's straight. What I noticed is that the mount actually sits in there pretty good. I mean, there's a little bit of a gap on either side, but that's fine. The factory one actually came with bigger rubber ends that you actually put in as spacers. That's not really an issue. I mean, you can try and fit them in there, but all right, now that you get all your bolts in there, you get everything all tightened up. As you can see, the gaps, you know, whatever gaps there were aren't there anymore. I mean, you just have to tighten it down real good with 17mm socket, 1/2 inch, 3/8, whatever, you know, whatever you got will work. I did notice that the factory bolt that goes down there has a little bit of a fitment issue. It kind of gets hung up on that spot right there, on that lip there. And the way I managed to get around that was I basically took, you know, once I couldn't fit the socket because of the clearance issues, I just took a hammer on the end of you know, one of the extensions, and I just hammered down on it so it went past the lip or whatever, and then I was able to do it. It was fine. Wasn't expected, but you know, things happen. Things are, you know, you're gonna run into this kind of issue when you have dealing with handmade stuff. All right, here's the tranny mount. If you notice, it's 3 bolts. And it kind of steps down into the back on the bell housing. And then here's the aftermarket one, the Yonaka Motorsports motor mount. And if you notice, it still has this 3 bolts. And then on the other side, to account for that step down, it's got a notch. And that's, you know, that matters. I mean, obviously, you can only put this in one way. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, if you get this messed up, I mean, you shouldn't really be shouldn't be touching your car in the first place. You know, if you have any doubts about doing anything like this, definitely take it to someone you know that has better experience, you know, or a shop. All right, again, you want to come over to this side underneath the tranny and set the jack underneath the transmission side. Again, you don't really have to go crazy. Just need to support it so that way, you know, it takes some pressure off the bolts and everything. Makes the install and you know, uninstall pretty easy. So don't forget that step. It's pretty important. Plus, if you're loosening those bolts and you don't have it supported, basically the transmission is going to drop down. You know, it's not going to fall out of your car or nothing, but you know, it's definitely not going to be fun trying to get it back up in there. So again, make sure you don't skip this step at all. All right, now back on to the mount. As you can see, I got the bolts out and everything like that, and if you kept the tranny under there and kept it in a good spot and jacked it up decent enough, you know, the mount actually can just come right out. I mean, you know, I have an intake on here. You know, your factory intake is definitely going to have to come out. I mean, you just got to turn it around, get it to the point, it comes right out, done. All right, upon, you know, taking that stuff out, sometimes this will happen. The stud will come out of the trans. I mean, it threads in like, you know, a normal bolt. But what happens is, you know, the threads on top, they get a little boogered or whatever. And if somebody impacted them on, they don't come off. I mean, that's pretty typical, you know, of somebody not doing stuff right. You know, both of these came out. And if that happens, you definitely need to go get another bolt. You know, because I mean, this will not fit with the aftermarket mounts. They're just not long enough if the nut becomes stuck. With the factory mount, you can actually still reuse this. This is fine. I mean, you don't have to go and replace it, but with these aftermarket mounts, you definitely need to get longer bolts. And just a little trip to the store. You have to get some washers. The bolts that were available to me were 45 millimeters long, which are a little long, so the washers are going to help take up that space. But the bolts themselves are for anybody that needs to that doesn't know how to measure, or they don't have a bolt to bring in there, like for the EG chassis where you need to reuse bolts. These are M12 by 1 1/4. So I mean, the 1 1/4 is definitely important. 1 1/4 is pretty much Japanese spec, and you will need 3 of these. So again, M12 by 1 1/4 for those that don't. There you have it. The motor mount installed. Everything fit great. Just had to get new bolts, as described before. 3 M12 1 1/4 inch bolts with some washers for spacers, take up the slack. So you know, if you find, you know, your store may not have the right length, you know, if they're too long, you know, just get some washers in there. If not, you might, you know, if you do some searching, you could probably find them with no problem.